This meeting is being recorded.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Today's session is a pretty interesting one. I'm really excited. I got up much earlier and I'm ready to listen to the Pilgrims' progress, and I was thinking, how do I introduce today's session to probably some of the new, at least one or two people who may be joining in new, right? So just a second, I'm just admitting everyone. Okay, so then what best can I do than quote Adi Shankara's shloka: Satsangatve Nissangatvam, Nissangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve Nischalatatvam, Nischalatatve Jivan Mukti. So without much explaining that, I know all of you know what that 4 steps mean. So I would turn on the floor to the Pilgrims, and maybe what I want to request is perhaps Krishna, if you can start off by giving a little bit of background, like the way that you described in the group, in terms of how you start off for the Tiruvannamalai and how the whole things fell together. That'll be helpful, and we want to learn and enjoy.
Sounds good. Hari Om, everybody. So the whole India trip started.
Krishna, I'm so sorry. If you want to share photos, feel free to. But if you're not prepared, that's okay.
Got it. I think a lot of it is in the WhatsApp group, so I don't know how to forward it quickly from there to here. But we'll figure out a way as we go on. So the whole thing started because my brother wanted to conduct Upanayanam for his son. Quick Sanskrit thing recently learned from Swami Paramarthananda ji. This Upanayanam is related to the word Upanishad. Both of them have the Upani prefix. Upa means near, ni means to go down, nearby, down, and then ask for that. And in the case of Upanishad, Shad means to destroy the ignorance and provide knowledge. Nayanam, Ayanam means the way, the path. That's like Dakshinayanam, Uttarayanam is the way, Ramayanam, life of Ramayana. Similarly, Upanayanam is like the way that the brahmachari lives going forward. Upanishad, Upanayanam. Pretty cool thing that I just learned. So my brother fixed Upanayanam for his son. My brother-in-law tagged along and fixed an Upanayanam for his son. And then by the time when I was fixing up the trip, there was a self-imposed 7-day quarantine period that was to be enforced. And between the 2 Upanayanams, there were like about 10 days. So all this put together, this became like a 26, 27-day trip that I normally don't do for this long, nor could I take time off. But there were like too many things between the Omicron still was not fully as tamed as it looks to be now. Given all this, there were like too many uncertainties. And then also the whole part of where do I stay at this various long junctures, because I want to work remotely and make use of that time. So it's like at this point, suddenly one day, between various readings, Arunachala name popped up in my head. So I decided, okay, this like the time when I'm going to be in Chennai, I'm going to make a trip to Tiruvannamalai. And from that point, my pivot changed. I'm going to make this trip for Lord Arunachaleshwara, and everything else, including the Upanayanam, meeting parents, coming to India, everything else becomes secondary. It's all to kind of enable this one main thing. And then lo and behold, a lot of things started falling into place. The plan came together. And that's all I had in mind, is to just go to Tiruvannamalai. I'll go to the temple and go to Ramanashram and see where things go. At this point, like as I was chatting with some of these people in this very satsang, I was mentioning to Guns that I was going to be doing this Tiruvannamalai trip. And he's based out of Atlanta, but he was in Trichy at that time to spend time with his father. And he mentioned immediately, I'm in, I will join you. Either you can pick me up on the way from Coimbatore to Chennai, or I will come there. We'll figure out a way. We'll meet midpoint or come from Chennai. Any which way you decide is the easiest thing, we will do it. And then he was also in the process of writing his own version of transcribing and translating Swami Guruparananda ji's summary of Bhagavad Gita lectures, the first 10 lectures. And it's like already into 350 pages or so. I highly recommend that book. It's an amazing job done. It is in and out completely Gun's version, not rephrasing any particular Swamiji or any other book. It is his own way of telling the Vedanta story. I absolutely love it. I'm only about 35% or so through. So he was writing that book, and so he had an intention to meet Swamiji for the first time in person. So he said, oh, by the way, I'm going to be meeting Swami Guruparananda. And I said, oh, if you're doing that, I'm in for that trip. So that too kind of mixed up. And then there was this other group, and I was mentioning to VP Rajesh and Ajay, hey, I'm going to be in India, and I was flying in through Delhi. So that's how like the Delhi connection started. And I said, I might probably will try to meet you as well, but at the same time, I'm going to be doing this. And immediately both of them said, we are in. Like, we'll fly down to Chennai and you take care of the itinerary from that point. We'll just follow. Whatever you say, it's good for us. So believe it or not, within like 0 to 24 hours, all of us, like 4 of us were now suddenly in on this plan to Tiruvannamalai. And then within the next 24 hours, I moved my various travel itinerary here and there to make sure that I had like those 4 days free, work from home schedule, everything lined up. Gunz moved his USA trip by 2 days and rearranged his family meetup schedule so he could spend 4 days with us. And Ajay and VP booked tickets from Delhi to Chennai round trip. So all of this got done like less than 48 hours. So the rest that was left was to figure out what we actually do. So of course, Tiruvannamalai is this great temple city. Lord Arunachaleshwara is there. So the temple visit is a must. And then the very important thing that people do there is what is called a Girivalam, Giri, the mountain. So it's a very strong belief of everybody that the entire mountain is Lord Shiva. That is Sakshat Lord Shiva. And so that's why even when they walk on the mountain, people walk barefoot, which is what we also did when we hiked up Skandashramam and Virupaksha cave. So there's like these 2 caves that are very important because of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi meditated there for a combined period of 23 years. So the entire mountain is a linga. It is Lord Shiva. And so people go around it. And if you do it on Paurnami or the Kartika Deepam, those are all the very auspicious days. But any day, any time you can do. There is like no gate or anything like that. It's just like mostly a paved path by now. So you could just like start walking from any point. Ideally, you want to start from a temple and then finish at the temple. In our case, because we are very close to the Ramanashramam, we started at the Ramanashramam and we ended at the Ramanashramam. So the Girivalam is like about 14 kilometers, takes about anywhere from 4 to 5 hours. We took about 4.5 hours for that. So that's the second thing that we had decided. So that's 2 with Lord Arunachala. And then of course, the other big thing that Tiruvannamalai is known for is because Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. So it's the same story. Like when he was in Madurai, a visitor came to his house and one day said Arunachala, that he just came from Tiruvannamalai. And that's that. From that moment, Bhagavan's mind just said, that's my place. I want to go to my father's place. And he decided that's where he's going to spend the rest of his life. And one fine day, very coincidentally, his brother, he was not paying too much attention to school at that point because he has already attained that self-knowledge. One day he had this fear of death. This is actually a must read. Bhagavan's biography is a must read. But a very short recap is one day he had like this big fear that he was going to die. So he laid down, pretended that he was dead, and then asked himself, okay, what's going to happen to this body? What's happening to this mind? Am I still the body? And then what do I do? And then like in less than 30 minutes, he went from 0 to infinity. So that's that. So after that, he was completely in a self-realized state. And all this happened in Madurai, which is the city where I'm from. So when this happened, and then he was still like living along with his brother's family, and his mom was there, his father had passed away. And then one day he was not performing very well in school. And his brother asked him, what are you doing with all this? Are you even serious? And that kind of actually triggered the question the other way for him. Yeah, what am I doing here? I should go to my father's place. And he wrote a very short letter saying, I'm going on my father's command. No need to search for me. It's all for a good cause. no money need to be spent. And by the time he finished the letter, he could not even say I. So he signed the letter with a dot. That's it. And it's like a beautiful letter that he wrote in Tamil. And it's like just 3 lines, put it a dot, and that's it. He just took some money and then he went to Tiruvannamalai. He threw away the rest of the money and everything. He stayed like for 1 year in the temple, and then for about 7 years in Skandashramam, and then another 16 years in Virupaksha cave. So that's like all the places where he meditated. And then at that point, enough people over 23, 24 years had realized his greatness, and they built a formal ashram for him and asked him to come there and grace everybody. So that's the Ramanashrama. It's the same ashram. Bhagavan has been there in the various places. You can see the hall where he meditated, where he sat, the hall where he attained mukti, the kitchen where he's supposed to have worked and he had cooked and interacted with a lot of the things. That's probably why the fragrance exists to this day, one of the best meals we have ever had in the ashram. And so that's the other thing. So our second plan was, okay, the temple, the Girivalam, and then go to Ramanashram. Then we said, we'll figure out what comes next. And then the third part was like, if the paths were open and it's possible to do, we will actually go to Skandashramam and Virupaksha cave, because they are still maintained as like very small caves with like as like a meditation center, and you can definitely feel the energy there and the divine atmosphere. It's just blissful. So that's how the plan came about. And then, so while this core Tiruvannamalai trip got planned, so Swami Guruparananda ji lives in his ashram called Purnalayam, which is somewhere in the vicinity of Kanchipuram, if you were to peg a big city near it. So Chennai to Kanchipuram is a good way to think about it. Maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours from Chennai. So on the way to Tiruvannamalai, we stopped to meet Swami Guruparananda ji for 2 hours. Then we went to Tiruvannamalai, had the 2 days of stay there. And then on the 4th day, when we came back to Chennai, we had an appointment to meet Swami Paramarthananda ji at his place in Mylapore. So that is like the very crux of the trip. I've been speaking for a while, so I'll stop at this point and let somebody else tell some other part of it, and then I'll jump back in as needed.
Yeah, thanks, Krishna. Krishna, I think you summarized it really well. I think the most important thing was that, I think it just happened at the sort of almost like a spur of the moment. It was almost unplanned, and then it was totally kind of planned by Krishna and Gunz. I mean, VP and I were like freeloaders almost. We just showed up, but it was a fascinating trip, and I mean, something that was beyond sort of my sort of expectation, if you will, because it just went to plan. We did the Girivalam, 14 kilometers for a city kind of guy like me, very tough. We walked barefoot, and I had blisters, and I was hopping around for the next 2 days. But at no point did I feel, oh, this was such a pain. It was blissful all through, despite all the pain and discomfort. I think just each stop that we had, whether it was Purnalayam, whether it was Ramanashrama, eating in the temples, the prasadam, the walk. We also met a lot of interesting people. I mean, the place that we were staying at, just the floor below was somebody who was a volunteer at the Ramanashram, and he very kindly kind of gave us a bit of a download of the place and the history, and helped us kind of get into the ashram. And the meal that Krishna talked about was with his kind of sort of blessings, if you will. And then of course, coming to Chennai, meeting Swami P, which certainly was a very important highlight. And I think Krishna has kind of written some amazing sort of notes. I mean, he was a perfect scribe. I think it all sort of really, really fell in place. And for me, it was completely a unique experience. I have never been into religion or spirituality, but it just made me feel like, this is the place where which gives you peace. These are the kind of things that you do and you feel like this is worth it every moment. And just one comment, before I stop, one of the things that was totally mind-blowing was that between Swami P and Swami G, we spent a total of 3 hours. I was actually expecting it to be probably 30 to 45 minutes each, but it just was surreal in that sense. But what I was amazed by was that, we spent 3 hours. Between us, we spoke about, the learnings throughout the trip. And it's kind of still sort of resonating in my mind. So it was 3 hours of sheer wisdom, and just to kind of absorb it and do the sort of, manana, and you kind of feel like, if 3 hours can give you so much, what would it be if you actually lived with them, or you were there like full-time shishyas, if you will. It just blew my mind. It has been amazing. And I think somebody said this, but between them, they actually answered most of the burning questions. And again, I won't get into details. We probably will kind of talk about some strands of it. But, if you see, I was actually reading before this call, the notes that Krishna sent, and there is so much of wisdom in it. It's just unbelievable. So I just want to thank sort of, God, Paramatma, all our satsangis for making this happen.
Thank you, Ajay. Krishna, would you mind, I know you had written this fantastic note. Would you mind actually, for the benefit of whoever is going to be listening to this later, highlighting some of, do you agree? Does the group agree that makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also want to dive deeper into asking some of the questions, what they asked Swami, both the Swamijis, and get some answers as well. So BP, Guns, Krishna, and Vidya, go for it.
So maybe, I'll just give you the backstory from my side. So I had, just before Krishna messaged me, I had finished 2 books just about around that same time, or actually finished 1 book, but there was second book I was still reading. And both of them had mentioned Ramana Maharshi's ashram in that. So the first book is Home at Last by Sharda Ji that Kishore had introduced us to. And, in that book, she had talked about her experience of going to various spiritual places within India. And she particularly talked about going to Ramana Maharshi's ashram. And then, over there, she really was blown away by the kind of experiences that she had in the Skanda ashram and the Virupaksha cave. So it stayed with me that, at some point I do want to go to these 2 places. And in case of the second book, the Paul Burton's book, which talks about his going around in India and then meeting Ramana Maharshi in Tiruvannamalai. So that was also something that, I was reading while this message came. So for me, it was a very easy yes, that, I just realized that there is no way I'm going to travel all the way to South and go to the temple on my own. And these 2 Tamilians are there, so might as well just coattail here, which is, I guess you can now say, is my strategy, that always find these places where somebody is and you just latch on to that. So for me, it was an instant, yeah.
Hey, VP, I want to add one thing, but I'll come back to this later. But you had suggested that we would rent a car and stuff from Chennai and everything. And I just shut you down saying you're coming to our place, or as we say in Tamil, Nammapeta. And so just take it easy, just shut up and just come over. So I thought it was funny. Anyway, go ahead.
And yeah, so I was just saying, for me, it was an easy decision that, I need to be there. And Guns, obviously, as he was just saying, he just signed up for taking care of all the logistics. So I said, yay, this is wonderful. And the second thing I would say is, as Krishna was saying, that when we started our Girivalam, there was a Ganesh temple right there. So Krishna, in a way, just sort of, we all followed him and he prayed to that particular temple so that we have a good walk. And it was just wonderful. And then we ended at that particular temple and we went inside because early in the morning it was closed. But then when we went inside, it was really very nice. small temple, but really beautiful. There's something nice about it. And it's just opposite the Ramanan Mahishi ashram. So if ever anybody is going there, I would highly recommend checking out that temple as well. With respect to the walk, I would say, it's a beautiful walk. And I was just surprised how popular Shirdi Sai Baba ji is in that part of the country. So on the way, and Rajiv, you will really appreciate this, there were at least 2 temples that I noticed. And then there was a beautiful meditation hall that somebody had made along the way. And we went inside and we just spent like 2 minutes over there. So I was just pleasantly surprised at how popular he is even down south. So that's something I thought I should share with the group. The other moment I would say is that, when we were thinking about going to Skandashram and Virupaksha cave, we were told that they are closed and we weren't sure why it was so. They were just saying that people are not being allowed to visit them. And so we were saying, okay, fine. There was a little bit of disappointment, but none of us were really thinking too much about it and was just carrying on with the schedule that day. But when in the evening we came back, the gentleman who was staying downstairs, who was the volunteer in the ashram, and his name is Raghav. And so Raghav and his wife, they just told us that, we are going to go there tomorrow. Would you like to come? And obviously all 4 of us jumped at it because that was clearly on the agenda. So it's like what Krishna kept saying throughout the trip, that, just trust the Bhagwan and it will happen. And it happened. And we, next day we went with them. And because they are volunteers, we were able to access those 2 places, which are extremely, extremely spiritual, I would say. And I didn't want to leave Virupaksha cave because I just thought it was so nice to just sit there and meditate. And that day being Ekadashi, so as some of us, fast regularly, Ajay and I were planning to fast. But then this volunteer Raghav, he asked us as we were heading towards those 2 places, Skandashram and Virupaksha cave, that would you like to eat prasadam? And, just to provide the context, when he asked me that question, the day before that, both Ajay and I were not sure what the dining hall was. So we were just going into the dining hall and we were stopped because it was just meant for ashramites. So the moment he said, would you like to have prasadam once we come back from the cave? We said absolutely yes. And it was a fantastic experience because you realize that how much, spirituality is around you. And it is reflected in the way volunteers are serving you. It is reflected in the way the place is organized to have the meal together, the communal meal, and the quality of the food, and the people who are sitting around you at the energy level over there. It was just a sublime experience, I would say. So those are some of the highlights, that I thought I will kick off with, and we'll just obviously come back and talk more about different things.
Yeah, so Gunds and Vidya, if you both can quickly summarize your highlights, and probably we can open up to a bunch of questions. I have the first question for VP and Ajay. So after that.
Yeah, hey, I'll just try to complement some of the things that Krishna, VP, and Ajay were talking about. I'll give it to Vidya here quickly. So some of the other things that happened, in my case, like Krishna was mentioning, so these translations and it all started with me listening to Swamiji's lectures in Tamil on the podcast. And Guntax was quite instrumental to kind of nudge me into the right lectures and all that right at the beginning. So at the beginning of this trip, when VP and Ajay landed, we had this 1.5 hour drive or 2 hour drive to the Purnalayam place. We stopped by for lunch and we were talking and everything. And then we were walking back to the car and Ajay was like, so you're going to meet Swami Ji, whose lectures you've worked on for the last 1.5, 2 years. So do you have questions for him? And then I realized I didn't even know what to ask the Swami Ji. And this continued, right? And at the same time, we had all not met in person. So we were all like exchanging different things about ourselves. And this was the beauty of it, right? when we meet once a week here, we talk about a lot of different things. But when you meet in person, it's a very different experience because we get to know each other much better. And what has happened, I mean, we were all, Krishna, of course, went to a different university, but we all felt like, the buddies from Zindagi or something, just going on a trip and doing stopping wherever we wanted to, just checking out the scenery on the way and all that. So all of those things kind of added to the overall charm of doing this, right? So I just wanted to add that. And then we reached Swami Ji's place. We went, so we reached there a little early because we didn't want to be late. And both these Swami Jis are very, very punctual. So we were all like kind of nervous, I would say, saying, okay, we were just, kind of like kids giggling and talking outside the ashram. And suddenly he opened the door and he said, you can come in, it's okay. So we all like walked in immediately and smiling, and we actually didn't know what the hell to do, right? So we walked in. He lives there alone. It's a small home. It's like 2 bedrooms or something, and very, very spick and span clean. And there's a hall inside where he meets with his students and such. So we went and sat there, and then we just sat there for 2 minutes. And he was looking at us, we were looking at him, and we were just wondering, okay, now who goes first? So that was very interesting. I think it was Ajay or me, one of us. We just popped a question, and then it was like it was like a champagne bottle. Like for the next 2 hours, we didn't even know what was going on. We just continuously asked. It was like the proper Q&A Upanishad type experience, right? And at the end of, we actually did not know how much time we spent there. And at the end, Swamiji looked up, and we all turned around and we were seeing, okay, what is he looking at? There was a clock above us. And then he very politely said, I thought that you all had to go to Tiruvannamalai or something like that. So we said, oh my God, it's been 2 hours, and we didn't even realize it. So anyway, as you heard, VP and Krishna Ajay described all the experiences at the Ramanashram. That was really, really beautiful. And both Krishna and I are from the south. I personally have never been to Tiruvannamalai before. One thing that really got me there was the temple. So I would highly recommend visiting the place, of course, for all these reasons. The temple is massive. It's a massive temple. It's one of the bigger temples built in the south, and it's got 3 layers and everything. So just the sheer architectural splendor and everything is a sight. You get drawn in by everything that's going on there, and it was wonderful. And then I did not, I left early because I had some family obligations, but I did join for the cave visits, which was very nice. We ate at some restaurants there, which our host Raghav was recommending. We saw some Goshala, and there's a Patashala there with students learning different Vedas and stuff in the ashram, which was really nice. Then we headed back to Chennai. I went there a day earlier when the other guys joined us. When we met with Swami Paramarthananda, before we went in, Vidya was trying to find the place. That was an interesting adventure. And then we walked inside and went and sat down, and it was kind of the similar experience. I mean, you would think that we had spent 2 hours with Swami Ji, and now we are all like very seasoned. We are going to go and start talking with Swami P here, and we'll start asking the questions. But it was again complete silence. We were just awestruck, and we were just sitting in front of him. And then Vidya came in and joined us. Luckily enough, she found the place on time, and then it was beautiful 1 hour of conversation. So with that, I'll give it to Vidya.
Hey, Rajesh, Lakshmi is waiting in the meeting room.
She's in. I
Okay, I
admitted her.
joined. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
admitted.
joined. Thanks.
Thanks, Gunza, for the introduction. Well, first of all, I need to really thank VP Rajesh, because when I started, I had planned to meet my mom and also go to Bangalore for Mridangam classes for my son. I never thought that I would have, the agenda of meeting Swami Paramarthananda ji. So I just messaged VP saying that I'm leaving and I owe you something and I need to bring that. Shall I post or mail that from Chennai to Delhi? And VP said, oh, you don't need to post. I'm coming to Chennai. I said, wow, that's just amazing. And then he told what his agenda is. And maybe that's the time they had just thought about all this pilgrim, going to Tiruvannamalai and other pilgrim places and come back to Chennai and see Swami Paramarthananda. So for me, it was like, I didn't even expect, I didn't ask, and it was right there for me. That itself, I feel that it's a God-sent message. And I said, that's very good. And I was wondering how I'm going to, have all this things that I had laid out for my mother. How am I going to come out of it and meet them on time? Then comes the time where I had to really buckle up and, come to Swami Peace Place, and I got lost. We were actually in that same area within maybe 100 kilometers, within that area, feet, I would say, not kilometers, but I couldn't find the place. And it was only 2 minutes left. And Krishna says, look, there's only 2 minutes left. We have to go inside. We can't give you direction. After that, the phones would be switched off. And he gave the license plate number and said, this is the first house on the left. And you find that out. The Google map was not working. Nothing was working for me at that time. I don't know why. But he said, you will not be late. Just be calm. Nothing is going to happen. You will reach. The moment he said that, the calmness prevailed. I don't know how that happened. And the driver who was driving me, he also felt very calm. I don't know why. He was all agitated and said, no, I tried this, I tried that, but he felt calm. It was like a magic thing. And then we saw the license plate. Iduva, seri pola ulla. He immediately said that in Tamil, and we went inside. And then I went inside, I saw 4 of them. They were stunned and I was stunned. I was just looked at, I didn't know what to say. It was the same feeling that I had got maybe in 1993 when I saw Kanchi, Perivar Peramacharya in Kanchipuram. Just the same aura, that energy. And he then asked, do you want to say anything? He said, you can take out your mask. Do you want to say anything? I couldn't speak. I just said, no, I don't want to say anything right now. So that was my first reaction. And I saw all of them were at the same reaction. And VP Rajesh had just asked a question. So then Swami P started to answer that. And that's the first, first reaction I had. And it was just a bliss. I can't describe more than that, but it was really good. With that, I will,
So Rajesh, just a couple of comments. One, Vivek, we also went to Yogiville in Tiruvannamalai. We had dinner and Radhika ji was very gracious. It's a beautiful, 16-acre ashram that they have set up where they do Ayurvedic treatment, and you could do sort of 10-15-day programs. We had a really nice sattvic dinner. But thank you for arranging it, because that was something, again, we had a sort of one slot in the evening, you kind of messaged and we did it. So again, everything fell into place. The other point I wanted to make was, before we kind of get into the details, is what Vidya and Gunts described in terms of just meeting the Swamis. I mean, how it started was just subliminal, in the sense that we just kind of were in awe. We just sat there with Swami G. For the first 10 minutes, he spoke actually not a lot. it was almost as if he was sort of sizing us up as to where this group is on their spiritual journey, right? Before he kind of spoke and elaborated in the same sort of level that we would understand, I would reckon. So to me, that was quite kind of interesting, because for the first 10 minutes we were tentative and the Swamiji was relatively quiet. So that was kind of one sort of experience. And then, as Vidya said, meeting Swami P was, I don't know, I was sitting right in front of him, and I don't know whether it was my being awestruck, or was he maybe coming out of a meditation sort of session before our meeting, because he told us that he's not available before 5. And I don't think there was anyone who came in before us, because no one left when we came in. But I was like, he was just radiant. And I don't know, it was a combination of different things, but I was like, I didn't know how to react. I mean, it was like, it was just a surreal experience for me. And, after 5 minutes, it became very, very sort of, it became okay. And frankly, I felt a lot more at ease with him than with Swami Ji, maybe because we had already met Swami Ji, and therefore we had the experience, and the conversation was a lot more free flowing. It was easier at some level, but, just meeting them to me was like, both of them, you just felt like, you had climbed one step in the journey. So yeah, I just wanted to share that.
Hey,
Right, that's nice. Yeah. So, so let me just ask this question, right? So maybe we can open up some questions and then that. So VP, have you mastered the art of tying the veshti now?
With a teacher
the
like
answer is yes.
It was just like one shot.
Okay. Okay, cool.
The answer is yes, Guntax. VP, you need to like put the guru on a pedestal. So
that's what I said. With a master like Guns, it was just like that.
No, and then the second question to both of you, right? VP and Ajay, are you guys comfortable sitting down on the floor and eating now?
Yeah,
I never had a problem. Yeah, I never had a problem sitting on the floor and eating, because in North also, at least when I was growing up, we would go and at times you will sit and they will serve you like that. So it was essentially going back to the childhood. Obviously, it is many years ago.
Yeah.
So I never had any problem. And I had gone to Alpna's Guruji's ashram in December, and there also the food is served while you're sitting down, right? So not a problem at all.
Okay.
No,
cool.
I was totally comfortable, sort of, with both the Swamijis. We sat on the floor, cross-legged. It was totally fine, except when we were eating. I just had to deal with my blisters, so I actually sat on a table and sort of bench, which was meant for older people.
Yeah.
So, so I felt quite.
I was going to say that, Ajay, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we walked around around Arunachala, Ajay had issues. I mean, we all do exercise and walk around or run and different things, right? But this one was, we wanted to all do that with bare feet. And, we were all, in the beginning, everything was fine, but then it just depends on how we individually react to these things. And Ajay started developing, he was having trouble walking, but I have to say, we finished it. We finished it at 9:15 or something, with a couple of wrong turns, and put some extra, half a kilometer there, which Ajay was like, I do not want to miss the next turn. And but when we ended at that restaurant, I can tell you there is a photograph that Krishna captured, and he was the capturer of a whole bunch of photos. We wanted to capture all the plates and the bowls and everything, because we wanted to let you all know that it was 4.5 hours of being on bare feet, and that meal also was sublime. But the thing is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So the question, maybe I think we should just narrow down a little bit down, go straight to some other topics. You said, Gunj, you said that it's like buddies in in Zindagi or something like that. So I presume that you
Zindagi na milegi
Zindagi na
dobara.
mile dobara. Okay, so now you reached Swami Ji's ashram. Can those 2 hours? Can you share? What did you guys ask, and what was the responses, and how did it flow? Because I think that's, the prelude is all great, but now let's get to the meat of the stuff.
Yeah, I can just say a couple of short things. One is it was a beautiful experience in the sense that once we got going, we were kind of feeding off of each other of the questions. My observation right from the beginning was both the Swamiji, and like Ajay said, we were meeting Swami Guruparananda. He was the first Swamiji that we met, right? So we were all kind of a little bit nervous. That goes without saying. And we were wondering what types of questions to ask. And Swamiji, it was a very good observation by Ajay. He was, I think, sizing us up like 10-15 minutes into the conversation. He was definitely figuring out, and he never asked us any questions, right? He was waiting to see what questions he got, and he answered them slowly. And both Swamijis, I think, they, you ask them a question and they were not pouncing and be in a hurry to, yeah, I know that, I know this. There was, you realize that they are in a different plane, right? So they take their time to say, okay, how to communicate this. And then when the answer comes, you just feel absolute clarity. So I'll give one example to your question, Guntak. So we were asking about, and this was one of my questions somewhere in the middle of our conversations, like there's a lot of people with COVID, there's loneliness, there's mental depression, there's a lot of mental health issues that are going on. And each one of us here, I'm sure, and millions of people around the world, we all either go through this ourselves, or we know people, our friends, family, relatives, and so many people that we know go through these types of problems. So I was just asking him, what is your perspective on this? How can we, if we are on learning about spirituality, if we are growing mentally in our little satsang and all that, how can we help? Was one of the questions. And he said, so again, general response is closes his eyes, thinks for a few seconds, and then you get absolute clarity. So he said, obviously there is a lot of this going on. Oh, and by the way, both VP and Ajay were also a little worried because all his lectures are in Tamil. So he explained that too, why his lectures are in Tamil. I'll let one of the others explain that. But the entire conversation was in English, the full 2 hours. Even when me or Krishna suddenly, without involuntarily jumped into Tamil, his response would be in English. So he was very conscious of everybody there in the hall, which was very nice to see. So his answer to this question was, one of the things he said was, we need to help them, we need to be by their side, and we need to listen and everything, but please let's not have them meditate, because the mind is already very disturbed and it's going in so many different directions. We don't know what is going on inside another person's mind. And meditation is supposed to be, and he got into his guided meditation too, and he was looking at me when he spoke that. And I also listened to his guided meditation. So he said there's concentration and expansion and all these different types of value meditation and so forth. But I would recommend that we don't advise people to meditate at such a time. We need to keep the mind, either distracted or active in some other way. But please do not have people meditate and spend time alone, because the mind will get even more disturbed. So I thought that was a very well thought out kind of response, because we being, we are learning the spirituality and trying to get on this path. we might try to go and give this advice. So he already thought through that, and then that's the way he was responding. Of course, he gave other very practical answers to the same question.
Yeah, just like
Anybody else?
examples. I mean, he was. I mean, both he in particular, Swami G and even Swami P, masters in giving examples. And I loved how he explained the fact that human birth is meant to progress towards the path of moksha, and he took this lovely example of burning sandalwood, and he says, you don't burn sandalwood for fire. There is a different purpose to it. So in the same vein, you don't kind of take human birth to just while it away. Taking steps towards your spiritual journey is extremely important, because it's only in human birth you can do the karmas which will ultimately take you forward. He gave some really, really good examples. I mean, the way he said one interesting thing. He said he was emphasizing on the value of samatvam in speech, and I was reflecting on it later. He was a wonderful example of samatvam in speech, because he just sat there. He was in the same position virtually for 2 hours. He was, at no point did he say something and sort of say, okay, no, that's not what I meant. He was very clear. He didn't have to change one word in what he said. He answered everything to our satisfaction. Some of the things that he answered, and we had questions, we had a Q&A. There were things that we didn't fully appreciate, but when we went back and discussed amongst ourselves, we actually understood the import of it. But
give us some examples.
Sorry,
give us some examples.
Yeah,
if
so
you can remember
example,
them.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of thinking about it. There was something around you come back to me.
Ajay, I can give an example on the guilt one, like the pain of
Yeah,
guilt.
Yeah, the guilt one was clear, but go ahead. I mean, I think there was something that we sort of didn't fully understand, and then we got back. But go ahead, Krishna.
Yeah, that was one thing where we reflected more on it. Then he said it very quickly within like probably a minute or so. But then the more we reflected, it was like one of the very practical tips that you use guilt. Guilt induces a pain, and you use that pain to kind of course correct yourself. If that pain was not created, so we humans always we face a lot of choices, and we end up taking the choice that is easy. So if, for example, the pain of guilt is more, then we would choose the pain that is less. If, like, for example, waking up at 4 a.m. is like a example, like it's just like the other choice of sleeping is more easy to do, we choose that. But if the guilt pain goes above that, then you're going to feel the rest of the day, oh, I told myself I will wake up early, but I didn't, and it is going to eat you the rest of the day. Then the next day you won't make that mistake, because you would rather wake up early, take that hit, rather than have to go through the rest. I think the more we reflect on it, we kind of found a new way of how guilt is used and what's like the real purpose that it causes, and then also the rational reason why humans choose between the choices. He gave the example of prisoners. Like a lot of people are there in prison because at that moment, for them, the guilt pain was less than the crime they were committing. That's why they commit. There is no inherently good person or bad person. It's just like by vasanas and situations that they end up doing at that moment, they could not feel the pain of guilt, so they commit the act, and that's the time. That's the reason why they give them this present time for them to reflect and then come out changed. So that was very very profound. The more we thought and discussed about it, the more practical applications of it was clear.
Hey, you reminded me of two questions. One was a very basic, and we felt after about this 15 minutes, right, we felt very free, and we started asking some questions that was like really bothering us. So I think this was a VP question, like there's Maya and there's Brahman and all these concepts, but why did Brahman have Maya? Why was that even done? Like, why does Maya have to be there, or something like that? Maybe VP, you might remember it better.
I think the way Swamiji mentioned is we can't ask why, the why of why.
Right.
Yeah.
The why of why. And there was one other question that he replied. I think Ajay, you addressed this, right? This was my question. We get into in the mothership WhatsApp group, we get into a lot of debates on science versus spirituality and all that. So how do we handle those debates? Because sometimes it gets very heated, or people start getting emotionally involved in it. And he said, essentially, he said, you guys need to stop that. Don't prolong it. And when you know that there is disagreement, he actually said, just like you all say nowadays, agree to disagree and move on. So
Yeah.
that was, it was kind of like, we all know that inside, right? But just to hear it from the Swamiji was kind of a validation that's what we need to do. People will internalize and figure it out for themselves. That's what he was saying.
Kishore, you have a question?
Yeah, this was beautifully written by Krishna, but I wanted to kind of put it on record in this about finding the Guru, finding you, and the fact that many of us, not all of us, most of us don't have a physical Guru. I mean, that we visit or frequently, and they are all virtual. I know this question had come up, so I was wondering if one of you can share the answer to that.
Yeah, actually, I had raised my hand to kind of bring out that point. Since Gunsov started off with Swamiji, I wanted to bring one question from Swami P that appealed to me the most, and it's like one of the top questions. I think like a few questions were around how do you find a guru? Should the guru be self-realized person? How do you tell if the guru is a self-realized person? And how do you be a very good shishya? So like this 4 or 5 questions around these themes that we had asked at various times. And Swami Paramarthananda ji's answer was, yeah, it was mind-blowing. So he said indirectly, like, so in my mind also I was thinking, I kind of accept him as a guru, but how do I formalize it? Do I take, like in the Upanishad, take a bundle of Samit and then say, no, teach me, or how does this work, right? So he said a very important point that crystallized it for us, that more than in the current way of teaching, more than the guru saying somebody is a shishya, it's like the shishya bhavana that is more important. The guru's teaching is always going to be the same. It's not going to be partial to different people. So the more that you have the shishya bhavana, the more respect you have for the guru, that you will take the message with more seriousness and with a more deeper meaning, and saying, oh, I need to follow this. My guru is doing this. My guru is saying this. I have the shraddha, and hence I will believe this. I'll do the Shravana Mananam, and then I will go this way. And to elucidate the importance of that point, he gave the example of Bhagavad Gita also. So like for a very long time, Krishna had been friends. He's the brother-in-law of Arjuna as well. And they had spent many, many years together, but nobody ever asked him Krishna. So even though Lord Krishna knows all the things that's going to happen, he's helpless to advise people because nobody asked him. That's why he said, like, knowledge cannot be given, it can only be taken. Only when there is a Shishya Bhavana and somebody says, this is like, I think, a practical advice for all of us, especially me too. Sometimes when chatting with friends, I kind of go into a little bit of this maybe preachy mode, and I need to stop. Like, it's like he says, don't try to give knowledge, it has to be taken. Somebody has to ask it. They first realize that I don't know this, and then they have the desire that I need to know this. And then only with that seriousness, when they ask, that whatever you give to them will make any sense. And then, of course, if it's from a guru and then you assume the role of Shishya, it's all the more important. So he waited all the way till the war, like chapter 2, verse 7, Te Shishya Aham. Only when he uttered those words that Krishna, okay, until then he was just a mere Parthasarthi, and then he gets elevated to a Jagat Guru. So now he is ready. Now he can impart whatever. Then, of course, the cleverness, the shloka is also Arjuna did not ask what astra I use, how do I win the war or anything. He said, tell me what is the highest good. Yet Shreyasyam Nishitam Bruhi Tanme. So he says, give me the highest good for me. And so it was a very well packed question. So Krishna was able to give the absolute true wisdom to Arjuna. So that was one powerful story. The other story that I remember that Swami Paramarthananda had used in one of his lectures is the moment that that you sincerely wish and pray for a guru, is Bhagavan enters into a contract with you. He's obligated to fulfill the contract of finding a suitable guru for you. And the example he gives is like a flower. So once a flower blossoms, it is nature's law that the bee should find the flower. The flower does not go to the bee. So you just develop yourself as a shishya and blossom to your fullest extent, and the guru will find you. The practical ways are you will be inclined towards listening to some YouTube lectures or going to satsangs or going to a talk, and somehow you will meet like-minded people. They will introduce you to somebody, and then you will end up finding a list of gurus. And he funnily called it guru dating. So it's okay to go around, like, try out different gurus. And I think it's Swami Guruparananda on the other topic. He said, you find the guru who's best suited to fixing your what you feel are like things that you need to develop on. For some people it might be upasana. For some people it might, I just need to do this devotional ritual based worship. And for some people it might be scripture based learning and so on. So you find the guru that will most satisfy like your way of method of learning. So that was the second impactful point. The third one, based on should the guru be self-realized, how do you find? So both the Swamis kind of said like, no, self-realized person will never say they are self-realized. That is one. And then Swami Paramarthananda gave a list of 3 types of gurus: the lowest form, the medium form, the highest form. And so, the term he used was Shrotriya Brahmanishta. Shrotriya is one who has formally learned and knows the methodology to teach. So that is Shrotriya. And Brahmanishta is one who is established in Brahman. It's a self-realized person. So the highest form of guru is a Shrotriya Brahmanishta, who is a self-realized person. They have learned formally and they know what is the methodology to teach others. So that's the highest form of guru. And then the medium form of guru is a Shrotriya person. So the guru may be due to their prarabdha or some vasanas, need not be self-realized, but they have learned all the scriptures formally. They're just working on like the final bit of things to go to the Brahmanishta stage, but they are Shrotriya. They know the scriptures in and out, and they're capable of teaching. And this is an example where the guru need not be, but if the shishya works hard enough, they might probably become a self-realized person, then the guru. So that's a medium form. And then the lowest kind he mentioned actually is ironically the Brahmanishta one. So these are people who have kind of are self-realized, but they have not learned through a formal system. So these are people who we call as mystics. They might sometimes do curing, or they might be able to do what appears as magic. They are great models, examples, role models to inspire us, and we can worship them and everything. But these are not the people who will teach you formally the Advaita Vedanta way of learning. So even though they are self-realized, they kind of form the lowest form of the strata than even just the Shrotriya person. So that was the third very, very impactful example of the three types of gurus.
So just a couple of comments. Thanks, Krishna. That's beautifully described. Wonderful. Just 2 or 3 comments on that. One, on this third kind of lowest form, he mentioned that I think Swami Guruparananda ji said, he says, going to the Himalayas where you'll probably meet Brahmagyanis, but who do not do systematic teaching, is not for moksha, but it is for vairagyam. He says going to the Himalayas is not to get enlightenment. The idea is to get away from the raga dvesha. So that was a very sort of interesting comment he made. Swami P made a comment in the context of guru, which was that very modest. He said the gurus exist because of shishyas. That was, like, to me, an extremely profound comment. And so he was kind of talking about the importance of shishya, and it's for the shishya to kind of get to a point where it becomes the flower that Krishna was referring to, and then the bee will automatically come in some shape or form to kind of take the nectar, or to the simile of getting to the nectar. And then the third one, again, something that, we've spoken about, enlightenment and, Brahma Jnanam, is both of them, very explicitly said that somebody who is enlightened will never say that they are enlightened. That's something that's been on our, we've spoken about that in our previous satsangs, but he did both of them really said that, you can have any guru and, but enlightenment is something that, you get there, but you are a normal jiva, and nothing changes in their exterior kind of, way of living.
Hey, Ajay, I just wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say one thing. This question came up with both Swamijis, right? And it was like copying and pasting. I can guarantee you they did not have a phone call or anything. It was like copy paste. So that the teaching is there and it's universal. It was just a big aha for me.
So on that topic, question for you. Some of you have probably been listening to Swami Paramarthananda's lectures, right? And I do not know about you, VP Rajesh, but I know that Ajay, Krishna, and Gunz, of course, Swamiji, you've been listening, and Vidya, I'm not sure about you. So when you actually met these people in person, did any switch turn on in your mind, or something happened? What happened?
So one comment which I think all of us kind of spoke about, and it resonated with us. For me, meeting Swami P felt like I knew him forever, because I've been sort of listening to his lectures for a long time. He's been playing in my ears, like, I've listened to probably 100 or more lectures of his. So you almost kind of know what he's going to say. He was so familiar, and therefore I felt so comfortable. I didn't feel the same with Swami Ji for obvious reasons, but Gunz, probably you did, because you've been sort of obviously listening to him and kind of translating him. But yeah, I mean, it almost felt like, I knew him. And with Swami P, it was so kind of such a good feeling that I kind of, when we did the Shashtang, I ended up sort of, holding his feet, and I just felt comfortable. I'm not somebody who feels comfortable doing these things, but with him, it was like easy. So that was something which I thought I'd share with you all.
Yeah, I would second what Ajay said. With Swami P, it was as if you know that person for ages. And also perspective from as a person, as a woman going in with 4 guys, I never felt anything strange. It was just simple and so easy that I was able to concentrate, and I had nothing else in my agenda. And it was just pure listening and pure absorbing. And whatever he said, especially about Shishya, the Shishya has to have that freedom. That freedom was always there. Like the moment I went in, the 1 minute of that Ascharyam, after that, it was just calmness and just being together. And I never felt that anywhere else. I had no fear, nothing. It was just pure bliss. It was different. So I would add that with what Ajay said.
Yeah, actually, Swami Guruparananda ji gave a great example. So he said he had a Shishya from Malaysia or something who had been listening to his lectures for 7 or 8 years. And then he met him for the first time. But he comes there and then he says, Swamiji, I'll take a photo with you. And then Swamiji, please stand up. I'm going to take a selfie. It was like almost commanding the Swamiji. And his wife was feeling very embarrassed and say, oh, no, he's a Swamiji. You cannot ask him. And he is very comfortable. No, don't worry. He's our Swamiji. He will do all that. And then he's like going on taking all the photos. And then in that one instant, Swamiji realizes, hey, I do not know him, but he knows me very well. So that is why he's so friendly with me, and he obliges for all the various photo posts. He's like sitting there waiting for his thought to begin. And this person is asking him to stand up, pose for a selfie and all that. So he gladly obliges. And the moment he said that, all of us in our mind with our respective gurus, it felt that way. Like for Gunz, it's Swamiji, for Ajay, me, and others it's Swami Paramarthananda and Swami SPG, Sarvapriyananda. We have listened to hundreds of lectures. Their voices feel so familiar. So much so, like I said, I used to listen to various Swami Brahmananda's Gita chanting, MS Subbulakshmi for Vishnu Sahasranamam and so on. But like Swami P's voice is ringing so much. Now I have switched completely to Bhagavad Gita chanting by Swami P, Vishnu Sahasranamam by Swami P, Aditya Hridayam by Swami P. It's like completely switched that voice is like so much tattooed in my brain. So yeah, that's the we felt totally comfortable that we knew him. Like a lot of examples, his stories, his way of talking. That's the other thing. Like the way he speaks in his lectures, you see him speaking in person as well. And even for impromptu questions, very measured response, no correcting, no stop words, like no clarification. So they're absolutely confident in their answers and in their knowledge of their answers, and this is like the highest knowledge to be known. So they have no doubt. It's like you think you're asking them a tricky question, they give you the answer. And then sometimes in actually one case they say, oh, that's like actually not the question, there is a harder correct question to ask, and if you don't get to that, I will tell you what the question is.
Yeah, that was funny. So Rajesh, to answer your question, I see, for me, Swami P will always be very special, because I don't know if you remember, you had given me his lectures in a book format called Introduction to Vedanta. And that was my first book which I read. So in that sense, even though I have not heard much of him beyond reading those lectures and listening to Tattva Bodha that we did, I think last year or the year before, but being with him was, for me, I was, very at ease from the get-go. And in fact, that's why, when all the others were a little silent, I just said, let me just clarify the definition of Devam, which, he had first talked about in his very early lectures. And he was very nice, and, he re-explained. And I said, Swamiji, I want a revision of that. And, he started explaining, how one interprets Devam. And I think one of the things that he said, and I had to look it up now because it was so profound, at least in my mind. He said that a value is a value only when the value of the value is valued by you. Now see how many times he has used value. And it took a few seconds when he was talking to even process that. And it was just, if you reflect on that sentence, and I'll repeat it again, perhaps a little slowly, a value is a value only when the value of the value is valued by you. And it was just amazing that, and this was in the context of one of us asking that, the moksha desire, right? How do you work on that? And how does it happen? And he said that the desire for mumukshutvam has to be so intense that it starts eating all the other desires. And I thought that was beautifully put together. That, and we have talked about it in different form, but I would say if there was one big aha moment out of that 1 hour, that was it. That, you have to just continue to work on that desire so much, stroke that desire so much, that all the other desires become, gradually unimportant. And I have personally experienced that, so I could really feel very strongly about this statement when he made that. And I was also thinking of the book that Kishore had mentioned, that Value of Values by Swami Saraswati Ji, Dayanand Saraswati Ji, which is sitting on my reading list, but I haven't gotten to that. But I was just thinking of that this sentence that he had put together, which is so profound. If I have to unpack it, understand it, and think about it more, I think I have to read that book. So I just wanted to share that with everyone, that is a very profound statement, as all of us are looking to or aspiring to be, free from this birth and life cycle.
So one of the questions that Swami Ji, at least to my limited understanding, didn't fully answer was when I asked him. I said, we all have, we all do, wrong. We do wrong, knowing it is wrong, much like Duryodhana did in Mahabharata. And this answer of value of values, basically saying that, look, I mean, you've got to value, rather than focus on the valuables almost. And that was, again, an answer which initially I was not sure when Swamiji answered it, but Swami P was crystal clear. I think the other one where we struggled initially was on when we asked the question why, and Swamiji basically said, do not ask too many whys, which kind of contradicts with sort of how we say Vedanta is very scientific, right? But at least in my mind, you know, when you ask a question why, I think Swami P explained about, you know, the fact that both Brahman and Maya are anantam, they have no beginning, etc. So he explained the whole concept of Dvaita and Advaita extremely well, pretty much sort of asking the right question, as Krishna said, as opposed to the question that we had. But on the why question, at least in my mind, the way I think about it, that we progressively are answering the whys ourselves. It is not as if the answer does not exist. I think we just haven't got to that answer individually, depending on, you know, how we are thinking or how we are evolving spiritually. And a lot of questions, a lot of the whys, frankly, in this pilgrimage got, you know, you got a reasonably good sort of understanding and answer. I
Hey,
think
Ajay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to add one thing that you said, that was a very big highlight personally for me and in our meeting with Swami P, where he answered why why are these questions irrelevant? Because he got into, you know, why matter can neither be created nor destroyed and all this physical existence. And then he talked about energy matter conversion, E equals mc squared. He got into the Big Bang, which was all like, it blew me away, the expanse of the knowledge and the depth to which he went. And he said, you can keep on asking why did the Big Bang happen? So and it was just very clear that, you know, at some point this why becomes irrelevant. So I just thought that was a very special moment.
The why becomes a bottleneck. So that doesn't bring you to the desire or burning desire to get moksha. So that was very clear the way he said it.
Exactly. I mean, on one of the whys, you know, I think this was VP's question as to why do we not know about our past janma, or, you know, if we knew it, then we could do something about it. And he answered beautifully. He said, the question is not wrong. The question is irrelevant. Because he said, if you have to do good, just do good today. There is nothing you can change, you know, of what you've done in the past and where you are today. Just do good today and you can turbocharge your future. He used those words. You can turbocharge your future by doing good today, and knowing about why you are here today and what did you do in the past is irrelevant. It is not wrong. It's a very interesting choice of words he had. He says it's irrelevant.
Actually, sorry to interrupt you, but VP's question was very interesting there.
Yeah.
He said he wanted to go back into his past and fix all his bad karmas.
Yes.
He literally said that. I was like, VP, what are you doing? And
he smiled for that.
So
and it
comfortable talking like that.
So is that when the penny dropped for you, VP?
Yeah, that's why I said in the group that, you know, Swami P was just amazing. He answered all the questions, and, you know, you walked away saying, boss, after this, you don't need a whole lot, right? I mean, because, you know, I was asking, as I said, I was very comfortable with him, unlike with Swami Ji. So I was asking, you know, questions like this, or questions like, you know, tell me the best disciple you have who has progressed the farthest. How can one copy that, right? You won't, typically in a serious situation, you won't ask questions in that particular fashion. But I just felt so comfortable with him asking in such manner. And, you know, that's when his answer was just mind blowing. He just said, go back to the basics, start with sadhana chatushtayam, and that's all there is. And I was like, wow, you know, it's like just basically sending us right back to the first principles, essentially.
So none of the answers. Sorry, Vidya, go ahead.
And when VP Rajesh asked all these questions freely, like, I want to go back to my previous births, and if I did something wrong, I want to correct them. And he was like, he was calm, but at the same time, he was very, very clear to answer that. And VP Rajesh had put a timer because they were hurried to go back to take the flight back to Delhi. So he asked another question, and I think he answered. I don't even remember what question you asked, VP, but he answered that so fast, but came back to this question and reiterated to you, saying that don't even go back, just do sadhana ashram now, and now do a good thing. Try to do the best what you have right now, and don't even go back. So he was so clear that this question was more relevant to answer than the other question. It was pretty pretty awesome, like the way he answered it.
Yeah. I mean, none of the things that Swamiji and Swami P, if you think about it in hindsight, none of the things that they said were new. None of the things were things that we had not heard before, either through the lectures or reading some of the scriptures, some of the conversations that we've had on the satsang. None of it was new, but it was still like profound. It was still, there were so many wow moments, aha moments, even though all the answers were kind of what they were. And Swami Ji, I think, mentioned the concept of Shabd Pramana, which is kind of saying it is the Guru teaching, as in like speaking to the Shishya, which is the traditional sort of way of teaching. And while sitting in front of both the Swamis, we saw the power of Shabd Pramana. Person, sitting in person, speaking to us, answering questions live from a position where they're sitting obviously on an enlightened sort of platform. That was a real live example of Shabda Pramana and how powerful that is.
Yeah, thank you. So I had a question for you, Guns. I know that you've written a book about to get published and you took the blessings of Swami Ji. How did that experience go for you?
That experience was sublime, like every experience on this trip has been. So I actually took a printout of that draft. I had sent it to him, as you know, and I got the longest response from him. The first one, like you said, the first time I asked him, I told him that, Swamiji, I'm taking your lectures and I'm putting a lot of embellishments around it and doing my own thing. And his response was blessings. That was the reply, right? The second time I wrote to him, here is the thing and here's the draft and blah, blah. I was so excited. Please read through and let me know if you have any feedback. And then I got back blessings and best wishes. And Guntax told me that, wow, he wrote you a long reply. So it was exactly the same experience in front of him too. I went and said, Swamiji, I have a printout of this thing. So I can keep it here. And he said, yeah, just keep it here. That's it. So you were absolutely right, Guntax. I think, like going back to what Ajay said, that was a great observation. He was sizing us up. He also, I think he saw that we were very curious and we were trying to learn and we were being sincere. So he's just letting us do our thing. And same with Swami P, they are willing to answer when people have questions. They don't impose or they don't try to push things. In fact, that was a question that one of us asked Swami Ji, I think. If there has been caste system and discrimination over hundreds or thousands of years, and you all are Swamijis, I mean, this was like we were getting deep into the discussion. This was probably 1 hour into the discussion. I think it was VP who was asked this gutsy question. He said, why didn't the Swamijis of that time go and preach these teachings saying this is not right? If the Bhagavad Gita says the caste system is not determined by your birth, why didn't the Swamijis take up arms or, be very forceful and change the society at that time? And I thought the answer was interesting. He said, when the question is asked, the answers will be given. That words to that effect. He didn't exactly respond that way, but the Swamijis, he actually said, some of the Swamijis actually tried to do that. They tried to spread these teachings that way, but human behavior happens to be that way. When you know that you're more powerful than the other person, you start exploiting and so forth. So it was a good answer. Maybe it was not like 100% there, but in fact, I think that was one of our discussions, is like, why the VP kept insisting after we got out of our meeting on the way to Tiruvannamalai, he kept insisting, why didn't the Swamijis actually do this? I'm not on mute, I'm talking. So why didn't the Swamijis take more action, more proactive action? And it just happened that way,
Great.
I don't think
Yeah,
there's
and
a
I think
100% answer to that.
Yeah, no, but I think if I can add, Gunz, because what I took away after we were discussing it after the meeting, that perhaps they were spreading the word. It's just that they didn't want to be getting into this Vyavaharik world too much, and they don't want to be trying to solve the mithya problem, because for them, that's not really their journey. So at least that's how I resolved it in my head, that they would have tried their best, but they're not going to become Arjun in the battlefield. That's not their role, as they say.
Right. That's kind of what he said.
Yeah.
That they tried to what extent, and then they helped people who came to them.
So guys, so 7:26, 4 more minutes. And I'm going to ask one last question, and all 5 of you can do a round robin and answer or whatever, but please take 30 seconds to answer. The question is this. So, there's been a lot of quote unquote fear in a rational mind that, okay, you go meet a Swamiji and sometimes, they do this magic and you get dependent on them and all that stuff. And after that, you always are dependent on that Swamiji. And, a lot of fears, a lot of these kind of fears are there. So the question for you is, I know some of you have met these Swamijis for the first time, and some of you have probably met other Swamis in the past, but the question is very simple. Okay, do you find that these guys are doing some magic to kind of hook you in and get you onto something, or do you find that there is a liberation in meeting the Swamijis, that there is a guidance somewhere? How do you do that? Just 30 seconds each one of you, and then answer it to a scientific mind, right?
I think Swami Paramarthananda answered to exactly this point. So he was saying, like, when there is a real teacher who is teaching, so initially you go for the teacher and the teaching, but after some time the teacher fades away, the teaching and the importance of the method and the message that it is saying stays up front. That is more important, and that is what kind of carries on the lineage. That was pretty powerful. He said, like, some of the others who probably do us like more magic or hooking, you more find the personality of the guru to be prominent, rather than if you ask such a Shishya, hey, what is their main teaching? What did they teach? They will not be able to, but they will be able to think only about the guru. But whereas in the Advaita Vedanta, and especially these two gurus, we can confidently say that it's their teaching and the humility and their knowledge that kind of stood forth. Like, even if you take away the guru, that knowledge and the importance of it still stood up front.
Thank you.
So I think, Rajesh, if I can answer next, I would say that, in my case, I have met now, 3 Gurujis so far. And it was easy in the sense that, they were pre-screened, so I didn't have to think about beyond that point. But having met them and having had the experience, I think you can tell the way they talk to you that they are not looking for anything from you. And I think that itself is, to me, the biggest tell, because I'm a very skeptical guy, as you can, that's my day job. So therefore, to be in their presence when they are not looking for anything from you, I think tells you a lot more. And they're only trying to tell you things that are good for you, or they're just answering your questions. And there is no agenda there. And as long as you feel that there is no agenda, then I think it sort of answers the question, right, to the scientific mind. And they are also being very logical about it, that start here, read this, read that. And to that extent, if you go with some kind of little bit of faith, that like Swami SPG says, that if you're going to study math in college, well, you have to choose math first of all, and then show up to read the textbook with some basic faith. And I think that's probably that's exactly the right answer in my mind.
Yeah, I think I have a similar sort of sentiment as VP. I'm myself very skeptical, and I've often asked myself the question as to why there are certain Swamis that I feel comfortable listening to and imbibing their knowledge, and there are others who I'm more skeptical about or whatever. And what you realize is that with sort of the three sort of Swamis, like basically P, Swamiji, and SPG as well, what you like is the fact that they have no agenda of their own. Their only singular purpose is to impart knowledge. They're not trying to build a cult by themselves. They are not flashy. They just say what they have to say and they shut up. Sort of it resonates with my sort of mindset. And, as VP was saying, they're structured, they're logical, they will answer every question. They will not dodge questions. We may not fully sort of grasp them or understand them, but they will answer it in a very sort of scientific manner. And so, whether there was any fear, none at all. Or yes, absolutely. But no, it was a very, very pleasant experience.
Okay, 7:31. We have maybe 30 seconds more for Gunj and Vidya
so
each.
I would go with what Ajay said and VP said. There was absolutely no fear, and there was nothing of cult or anything of that sort in mind, and just an awe. And more than that, as I said before, as a woman, I never felt threatened or fear or any agenda there. It was just as if I was an Atman and they were an Atman, the whole group. So there was nothing about, somebody trying to mesmerize you or nothing of that sort. It was just pure conversation, a higher conversation with a higher agenda. And that was very, very clear, like the moment you enter and the moment you get out. And that awe continues not as, meeting Swami P, but to understand where we are studying, like what we are trying to achieve. Like the desire for moksha is increased little fold, that's where we are going. So it was only that. It was, I've never met Swamijis. I don't have these agenda of meeting people. It just comes. And I would say, again, it's a Daiva Bhakti. That's what I would say. But there's nothing more to that.
Last 30 seconds for you, Gunj.
Guntax, I'll just spend 5 seconds. So one thing that resonated with all of us in Tiruvannamalai was the person we were staying with, Raghav. We were telling him the first day, he did not know what we were doing, why we were there, and all. He just knew that we came to the temple, to the ashram. And then we were telling him about the Swamiji's meetings, and he said, you guys have reached Mount Everest. There is nowhere else to look. This is these are the people that you need to learn from. And that's, for us, it was the perfect thing. I think it truly was such an experience. So
Awesome. So with that, I think, we exceeded 3 minutes today. Apologies for that, but I think it is worthwhile listening to all of you. Thank you so much. Maybe we'll just conclude with our concluding prayer. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha, Sarve Santu Niramayah, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhaga Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you so much, all of you, and we'll meet next weekend.
Thanks,
Hari
everyone.
Om.
Thanks.
Hari
Thank
Om.
you.
Thank you.